What is up, Retromaniacs? My name is Mike. His name is Joe. His name is EP. And we're here to talk about cards. This week, I'm going to talk a little bit about the next generation of nostalgia. I want to debate, discuss, throw names out there. What we're looking for here are guys that maybe in 10 years, when a certain age people have more disposable income, they're a little older, they have a little more money, guys, they might go back and look to collect. Maybe guys who might be more popular in 10 years than they are now. You know, we're from the 90s. We already went through our nostalgia phase. We talk about that a lot. You know, I think a big part of collecting is collecting things that you loved as a kid, and then you got a little bit older, like Pokemon now too. I think you have a lot of those people who collected Pokemon when they were kids that now have more money and they're back into Pokemon. Mm-hmm. So kind of that's the way we're going to go with this. So I guess we'll all just throw some names out there and we'll discuss. Sound good?
Yep. Let's do it.
Okay. I'm going to start. I'll start. I'm a wrestling fan, right? Mm-hmm. I'm going to throw one out here. John Cena.
Oh, that's a good one.
Because right now, like, you have Hulk Hogan, you have the Hulk Hogan generation, you have the Rock generation. Mm-hmm. I feel like John Cena accomplished more in WWE than either of those two. Like, if you look, like, the Rock's run was really pretty short when you look back at it. Mm-hmm. Hulk Hogan's run, actually, although he was in the business for a long time, like, his WWF run wasn't super long. I mean, closer to Cena, but, you know, you have John Cena, who's in movies now. Funny guy. Like, he does
better actor
really,
than The Rock. He's a better actor than The Rock.
And I feel like super in 10 years, when people look back to buy the things they loved in their childhood, I think John Cena will be ahead of The Rock. He'll be definitely ahead of Hulk Hogan by then. So that's my name I'm going to throw out there.
Yeah, I love that because, like, Cena is beyond just a wrestling guy. Like, people, like, my grandmother would know who John Cena is, right? Not because what's his finisher, Mike? The F5? No, that's Brock.
That's Brock, yeah.
That's Brock. But
the attitude adjustment.
The attitude adjustment. So I haven't watched wrestling in a while. But
it used to be the FU.
That's what it was. Yeah. Okay. Like, and just people know him. He's in the public sphere now. And the Peacemaker show, him in Suicide Squad, he was such a good actor that I think people that didn't watch him wrestling, I could see collecting him because of his post-wrestling career. And that the people that are growing up watching the DC universe, potentially, I think people will, like, start looking at John Cena stuff as their kids now growing up and watching him potentially in Peacemaker 2 and some of the other shows they're going to put out and movies they're going to put out. I could see them even going back and looking for some of his wrestling stuff.
And he's in Fast and Furious movies too. Like, yeah, I just feel like he's he is the kind of the Rock of this next generation, probably. And as Joe said, like, Peacemaker, that show is fantastic. His comedic chops comedic chops are off the charts in my opinion. Like, he's really good at comedy. And so, yeah, he's a really good choice.
The problem with The Rock is, and I like The Rock, don't get me wrong. The problem with The Rock is he plays The Rock.
Yeah, he's The Rock.
He's The Rock in everything. Yeah. He doesn't really have range. Cena, like,
Rock doing the Rock face.
He had dramatic chops in Peacemaker. There were scenes in Peacemaker where you're like, holy shit, this guy can actually act. And I think that made me go back and look at buying Peacemaker comic books and Peacemaker cards. I'm sure of a certain generation, the people who have that crossover with wrestling more so will go back and say, oh, I have some scratch now. I can go get one of the what was his rookie card? Is it a SmackDown?
2002 Royal Rumble. Yeah.
Royal Rumble, that's right. So they might go back and start looking for those as something to wet their whistle with, having like a Cena PC.
And who knows what projects he ends up, movies or TV shows he ends up getting into between now and like 10 years from now. It could be even huger.
Okay. Who has something to throw out?
Well, I'm going to go along the same lines with someone who's beyond the sport right now. And maybe this doesn't fit in perfectly, but I'm just going to throw it out there. And I think he's under collected right now, but I think people are going to go back. Peyton Manning. Like, he's beyond football, I think, at this point. Like, he has a show on like the History Network. I mean, he's hosted Saturday Night Live. He has the Manning cast, which is more popular than Monday Night Football. I really feel like the people that couldn't afford his big stuff are going to be more interested down the road at maybe picking up some of his stuff, maybe even after his post football career. You know, he ended in 2013, I believe, 2015, somewhere around there.
2016, maybe.
Yeah,
it was a lot longer than I thought.
Yeah, it's been a while, but I think there's going to be this resurgence in people seeing Peyton Manning be in the world as beyond a football player, and they're going to go back and say, "Oh, I think I'm going to pick up his Topps Chrome Refractor. I have some money now I didn't have when he was a player. I'm going to go back and do that."
Especially with all the hype and everything Tom Brady gets. So, like, there's no argument at this point that Tom Brady was the best quarterback that played in the NFL. Like, stats to back it up, championships, but like Peyton Manning wasn't far behind Tom Brady.
No.
And
yeah.
If he would have been on a couple better teams, he would have
Switch
a lot
their
more
teams.
Championships too. Yeah,
switch their teams. How many championships does he have? If
and he's still
got
two with two different teams. Like, yeah, I think that's a great choice and a guy who should be worth a lot more than what he is currently.
Yeah, and there was a huge, I think it was a die cut of his SP Authentic just went. I think it was on Crystal's High Rollers recently, and it went for big money, but still not as big as you would think for a player of that caliber. But I do think like those higher end, you can still get some higher end stuff of his relatively cheap. But if you're a kid and you're starting to watch Monday Night Football and you see Peyton Manning, maybe in a few years you'll go back and pick up some of his stuff.
Yeah, I don't know if you addressed it, but I mean, if he hadn't got hurt, like his numbers would be. I mean, he would have even better numbers. Like he was. I mean, because he had better numbers than Brady all the way through. So.
Yeah. Okay. You have anybody, AP?
Oh, I got a bunch, and I'm gonna just throw out like, and this is a lot like the 2012 and 2013 baseball classes, the rookie classes. I mean, because that's when Trout. The Trout is the guy.
Trout class,
I've heard of him.
Trout class.
You have one of his rookies, right?
There are so many potential Hall of Famers. I do have two. There's so many potential Hall of Famers in that class though that are overlooked because of Trout. You got Goldschmidt, and you got Salvador Perez, and you got, of course, I'm drawing a blank. Yeah. But there's a lot of players from that class that that I think are overlooked. And I mean, Bryce Harper his rookie's in there. Manny Machado's 2013. Like it's very, very dense with these really, really fantastic players that are probably all Hall of Famers that have been overlooked by Trout for their entire careers.
That's a similar thing to the Peyton Manning, Tom Brady thing too. You have one guy who's just like so big that he's clouding everybody under him, but like those people have a lot of fans. Like those players, Bryce Harper, especially playing in Philadelphia now, is incredibly popular. And a lot of those guys get overlooked because they're not Mike Trout. So,
right.
And to the point about nostalgia, though, 10 years from now, the people who have been watching and loving Mike Trout who can't afford him because they don't have that income to pick up a Mike Trout card, 10 years from now, they're getting jobs and they can actually afford some of this stuff. They are going to go back and start looking at some of the Mike Trout stuff that they couldn't afford as kids and start picking that stuff up. He could be a huge nostalgia guy because so many people watching him now just don't have the ability to afford some of his cards. And it's not like his cards are going to like take a huge dip when he retires, but the people who want him can now afford him because they have some cheddar cheese in their accounts, their checking accounts.
I'm going to throw two guys out there right now for similar reasons. Rob Dyrdek and Travis Pastrana. Joe might not know who these guys are, but Rob Dyrdek, a skateboarder.
I did
Travis
know that one.
Pastrana did all kinds of crazy motorcycle stuff, became a NASCAR racer, but they both had shows on MTV VH1. Rob Dyrdek was on there forever. Travis Pastrana was on there for quite a long time. And people got to know the person, not just the athlete and what they did. And I feel like, those extreme sports in general, there's a lot of growth potential for those because I know my kids used to watch the Rob Dyrdek show all the time when they were younger, and now they're getting into their 20s. And I feel like those guys, especially in another 10 years from some of the alternative sports, like the X Games stuff. Like my kids watch that every year when it came up. So when they get a little older, they're going to look back, and that's going to be a huge part of their childhood too, outside of football and baseball, basketball. And I think there's a lot of growth potential in those kind of sports. And I think those two guys, having been on TV, people love it. Like Rob Dyrdek was hilarious. Like the shows were absolutely ridiculously bad, but fun in a fun way that you didn't want to not watch them. Like even as an adult, I watched them with them, and I would be laughing at the dumb stuff they did.
Yeah,
so
Ridiculousness is one of the greatest shows that's ever been put on television.
Shows ever.
It's great.
Yeah, I watched it. I've even watched it.
I love the Fantasy Factory shows though. Those were even better. I mean, it's all scripted stuff, but it's like done so poorly that like it's kind of tongue in cheek almost when you watch it, but it's so good.
It's that pop culture thing. I mean, that's what's so nostalgic. That's why they're remaking Night Court. I mean, there's so much nostalgia in that. You can look back and, like you said, Mike, your kids watch that stuff. When they're in their early 40s, they're going to be like, I remember that show. I remember this guy. I'm going to go back and get some of his stuff because I couldn't, I had enough money to buy a Rob Dyrdek card, but maybe it wasn't a priority for me because I have to go to school. I have to
get a job. It's not as big a deal right now.
It's not a big a deal right now.
Like Rob Dyrdek's rookie card is not worth all that much, but like he doesn't have a lot of them, and these guys don't have a lot of cards either. Like, and compare their rookie cards to like Mike Trout's, like how many
true scarcity,
Mike Trout,
actual scarcity.
Yeah, so I feel like there's a lot of growth potential in that kind of stuff.
I was just going to say that they get like the bump like The Rock and Cena get because they were great in their sport, in their original genre, and then they jumped and became maybe even bigger. A bigger personality anyway, and once they made it to their shows.
Okay.
So I got one. We were talking about pop culture. So I think when we started hitting the nostalgia, and we talked about this before we started recording, when we got back into it and we started to get that nostalgia factor, the biggest nostalgia factor for me was 90 Marvel Universe, right? 90 Marvel Universe was huge for me. I ripped open a box. I absolutely loved it. It was a little bit expensive, but again, I have a career. I have spendable income. I think like a little cheddar cheese. I think, and Mike, you brought it up initially, but it kind of goes into this. That what was 90 Marvel Universe was to me. I think the mid 2010s Marvel products will be for the next generation. So you're talking the Fleer Retro, all the PMGs, all the metal, the Spider-Man metal, the Avengers metal, X-Men metal, all that stuff that's come out since that resurgence back in the mid 2010s is going to be huge for people 10, 15 years down the road because you can afford it now. That shit is expensive. So if you want a PMG of your favorite Marvel character, guess what? You need a real job, or you need to really be good at hustling in the hobby because even it's come down, it's still really expensive. Like I have a career and a job, and I don't feel comfortable buying a Doctor Strange PMG for what they go for. Yeah. So I think, Mike, you might have a bigger take on this because you had brought up Marvel before we started recording. But I think that specifically that stuff from that mid 2000s on to about right now is going to be huge in 10 years.
Yeah, because you have a lot of kids and teenagers that love those movies, and where you go back to 90 MU because you love the comic books, these people got into it because of the movies. Like that's the real thing with Marvel. You have a real dividing line between the cinematic universe and the comic book world, and like all of this stuff that you mentioned is going to be stuff tied to the movies. And like I know you might consider 90 Marvel Universe rookie cards, but I feel like the younger people who are going to be a little bit older then are definitely going to go after the stuff from the movie eras. Like, they're not going to care as much about 90 Marvel Universe, but
correct. Absolutely correct.
Mid 2000, 2010, 2015 stuff. could go to the moon, because like so many people watch those movies, and so many of them are kids. Like you see all the products they have out there geared toward kids now. Like they didn't have that when we were younger.
Yeah.
Like they have everything and anything you could ever dream of. So
and it's actually limited. Like that's the difference between this and 90MU.
product,
The actual card product is limited. It's very difficult to get right now. It's numbered. It's so compared to 90MU, it's not only more expensive because it costs more to buy, but it's actually a little scarcer. Well, quite a bit scarcer, to be fair.
Yeah, the wax is like you just can't. It's almost unattainable. It's so expensive. It's just so it's crazy expensive. So you're probably looking at singles. And to kind of to your point, Mike, I think if you look at the art from the '90s and stuff, a lot of them are very different from like what we know today. So they want to buy their Iron Man, and their Captain America that kind of look at like the new modern takes on those characters.
And it feels like the artwork has kind of like shaped itself towards the movies a little bit. Like they know who their audience is.
Yeah,
the 90MU, that looked like it was pulled straight from the comic books, right? Mm-hmm. I think Marvel Masterpiece was a little bit different because they had, they bring an artist in to do stuff specific. But the stuff now, it feels like it's like an homage to the movies a lot of the time. So or that type of art.
And EP is still waiting for the Thor Love and Thunder set to come out. My next one, kind of sticking in line with my last one, Shaun White. You have Michael Jordan, you have Wayne Gretzky, you have Babe Ruth, you have Shaun White. Like you're talking about alternative sports, extreme sports, whatever you want to call it. He is the GOAT. There's no question. He's the Tiger Woods. Look what Tiger did for golf. And as people, even now, like when we look back, Tiger Woods, the value of his cards are worth more now than when they came out in 2001 when he was so hot.
And that was crazy back in 2001.
It was. So like Shaun White is absolutely, to a certain group of people, the same guy as Tiger Woods, same guy as LeBron James or Michael Jordan, depending on what era you're from. He is like the greatest of all time by far of what he did. And he has very little out there in terms of cards. Like I've been looking and I've been acquiring some stuff, but like, holy cow, he like, for somebody that big and that big of a name, like people know him from the Olympics that don't follow those sports, but they're going to tune in to watch Shaun White do the half pipe in the Olympics. But he doesn't have a lot of cards. He has a Sports Illustrated for Kids, which was his first, but like they didn't make cards of a lot of this stuff. So yeah, I feel like he has potential like to be worth a fortune in another 10 years.
Could he be like what Tony Hawk was kind of to us? Like he was
that's what, yeah.
Like I mean,
I think he surpasses Tony Hawk too, like Tony Hawk, because of the video games and stuff, like was very popular, but Shaun White had the Olympics, he has that.
Right.
Tony Hawk is very popular and was kind of mainstream popular, but Shaun White's mainstream popularity, I think, far surpasses Tony Hawk. And I love Tony Hawk. And like he was kind of like the pioneer of the alternative sports kind of thing. But Shaun White, like how many Olympics was he in? 4 or 5?
I was a ton, yeah.
And like I said, people that would otherwise not care anything about what Shaun White was doing know that, oh, well, he's the guy that they said is really good for our country, and he's probably going to win the gold medal, and I want to watch that. So,
and he's, to be fair, he's got an iconic look too.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Like I'm not going to give it away. This is what they call a tease in the business. But we had a guest on we're gonna have a video drop in a couple of weeks with some crazy red hair, and I got very Shaun White vibes from that. He's a very recognizable character. Like Tony Hawk, I think there's a whole Twitter thing of like Tony Hawk says that people run into him and say, Have you ever been told you look like Tony Hawk? Like, or who do you look like? He posts shit like that all the time.
There are videos of him driving in his car, rolling down his window, and like talking to people, and the people don't even realize that he's Tony Hawk.
Yeah. But Shaun
that doesn't happen to Shaun White.
You're not missing Shaun White, man. You're not missing Shaun White. So, But yeah, you're right, Mike. I mean, there is a whole generation of people. Again, I use this standard all the time. Would my grandmother know who this person is? I guarantee you my grandmother maybe not know his name, but says, "Oh, the big redhead kid." The kid with the huge hair. I mean, she would know that. And that's kind of how I determine if something's in like the lexicon, right? If they're in the public sphere.
Yeah.
EP?
All right.
Yeah, I think this is somebody we talked about before. It wasn't like originally somebody I was thinking about, but some that we talked about earlier and was a good discussion point. The NBA's Steph Curry. I mean, he has changed he's one of the best players right now. He's very collectible right now, but he has completely changed the game. And I think this generation, if you go to watch a high school game, like everybody's heaving up threes. I think Paulo Banchero, the rookie for I forget who he plays for, but he was he's like 1 for 34 and 3-pointers so far this year, something like that.
I think
people aren't afraid to throw 3-pointers because Steph Curry changed the game, made it a 3-point game.
Yeah, we did talk a little bit before the show about this, but I think it's a great point because he's a guy who's already incredibly popular in the hobby. We know that. But the point I said to you guys before we started, you had Michael Jordan. Oh, he was the best. Our generation, nobody will ever change our mind. Like there are other people that think LeBron James was better. They watched him play when they were younger, and they're like, Michael Jordan could have never been as good as LeBron. He was better. But you have another generation then after that look at Steph Curry. And I don't think we've really gotten to there, but I have seen stuff that makes me feel like we're approaching it, that some people are going to throw him into the greatest player of all time argument because he did change the game. There's no question about that. The greatest pure shooter, 3-point shooter that has ever played the game, period. No question. Like you can't argue that. And there's going to be a segment of people that go, no, LeBron James was not better than Steph Curry. I watched them play, and they're going to tend to be a little younger than the people that thought LeBron, and those people are a little younger than the people that thought Michael Jordan. But I do think that there's a real case to be made that people in 10 years will be saying, well, Steph Curry was the best that ever played.
And they'll be looking for his top scrum refractor or whatever. I mean, he came in a good time. And I think for me, I kind of base this on rookie cards. That's just how I collect. I mean, I know people collect inserts, they collect different things, whatever brings them joy, collect whatever you love, all that stuff. But for me, like people are going to go after his like, he looks like a 12-year-old Topps Chrome rookie card, right? I think that'll be the one, maybe refractors. People can't afford it now. Though I will say, as we talk about this, I'm thinking about all the kids I see on some of these YouTube videos who have more expensive collections than we have are probably like, what do you mean? I have 5 of those. But
I know, yeah.
But again, using that benchmark I've used 2 other times, my grandmother would know who Steph Curry is because of Subway commercials and because of Holy Moly. I mean, he again, it's such a great show. He again has like surpassed just being a basketball player. So you're going to get those people who obviously they watch. I don't watch basketball, but I enjoy Steph Curry because of Holy Moly. I think he's great on that. But there is going to be a segment. I think he's going to do more than just basketball and Holy Moly when he's done playing. So there's going to be that Peyton Manning, like he's going to stay relevant. And I think in 5, 10, 20 years, people are going to look back and say, I should pick up a Steph Curry card because I remember him from whatever it is. And I want to have that piece of nostalgia back in my collection.
Absolutely. All right. Anybody have any other names to throw out?
I think we covered literally everyone.
I have a couple here I just want to throw out. Not that I'm saying they will, but I just want to get your thoughts on them.
Okay.
Drew Brees. He's a guy who has retired and is completely forgotten about. Pretty good football player.
Dang good.
Yeah.
I mean,
do you think he'll ever reach a plateau?
I'm going to say no. I'm going to be controversial and say no. I'm sorry, Dustin, sports card dad. I think he had a chance to, and then he was absolutely horrendous on Sunday Night Football. I really think that killed him. I as stupid as that sounds, I really think his post-football career, it hasn't been great. Like he hasn't been like doing like fun.
He doesn't have the personality that like a Peyton Manning has for sure.
Or and he might be on your list, Mike. Someone like Rob Gronkowski. Like he's someone like he has such a personality post football that I think there's going to be a huge nostalgia thing with him because he's freaking hysterical.
Yeah.
And he's been doing stuff. I think he's a nostalgia guy. If we're
Yeah,
talking
that's
about
a good
people.
point. He wasn't on my list, but Gronk, I think definitely will be because he's such a character.
He's going to be a wrestler.
And he's going to be, everybody is still going to know who Gronk is in 10 years, even if he's not playing
I love
football.
Breeze, but he's going to fall into that Fran Tarkenton or whatever, who was an awesome player, and he really helped the city, and he elevated a team, but just, Yeah,
ridiculous player, best Saints player ever. But I mean, Peyton Manning, you could probably... we may be the second or third best, top 5 quarterback of all time, and he doesn't get the hobby love. So, and Breeze was played at the exact same time as Brady and him, so he's going to always be the number 3. I just feel like he's. I mean, obviously, Saints fans should always love him because I mean, what he did for that
revitalize the city, for sure.
Yeah. I have one other player here. I wanted to throw him out here because he plays a position that's kind of forgotten about. Adrian Peterson. That guy was clearly one of, if not the best running back who has played since Jim Brown. I'm not going to ever say that anybody was better than Jim Brown because what he did back when he did it was like crazy. And that's even before my time. That's not my nostalgia. That's just me going back and learning about how good that guy actually was.
Watching the clip, watching the highlight.
But nobody cares about running backs.
Mm-hmm.
Adrian Peterson was really good for a really long time. I don't know. Any chance that maybe people go, you know what? He was so good. I want to get his autographed rookie card.
I'm so glad you brought this up because he was one of the guys I was looking at potentially bringing up. And I really hope that the hobby gives more love to the running backs and receivers. Another guy that was on the list, that's Calvin Johnson. I mean,
I had him on my list too, but I don't want to keep bringing football players up.
Like holy crap! Like if you watched him play, if you saw him play, like he was dominant. Like absolutely,
he was
dominant.
the best wide receiver in the league when he played.
Yep,
and people,
no one could touch him. No one could
Right.
absolutely touch him. You see him. I'll never forget this because I had him on my fantasy teams. 3 Bengals standing around him, draped all over him. Just says, screw it. I'm going to go up and catch it.
Just throw it up higher. Absolutely I'll go catch it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so good.
To your point about Adrian Peterson, I think a lot of it is he held on too long. So he played on teams and he still played okay. He played better than some other running backs, but you were so used to seeing that 2,000-yard Adrian Peterson. I think you don't
Do you
even
think
need to talk
that
about
hurts
Jim Brown.
nostalgia though? Like
it might not.
I can understand people now aren't really maybe looking at him, but maybe in 10 years you
look at the numbers.
He's going to be
the guy
the Barry
played
Sanders
pretty well,
even
though he was old and shouldn't have been playing anymore.
And he was adding to those numbers. The numbers are going to look amazing in 10 years. And people look back and say, "Oh my gosh, look at this."
Yeah.
He's going to be, for people doing stack sales in 10 to 15 years, he's going to be the Barry Sanders, Emmitt Smiths. You put him in your stack sales and people are going to claim him. Like, he will be at that level. And I know we're talking about dollar cards, right? But still, I'm just to my point that we know if we have a Barry Sanders base card from 1998, people are going to claim that. There's no question about it. That's good for me. That's a good judge of how, nostalgic people are if they're willing to go out and start claiming stuff in stack sales. I have one more guy.
Okay.
Before we go, one more guy. Pat McAfee.
Ooh, that's a great one.
Interesting.
Where's he going to be in 10 years? If Brett Favre that's going to take all of his money? Who's sued him?
Yeah, Brett Favre.
It's
Brett Favre.
Yeah. I mean, talk about someone who eclipsed choking against Pitt, choking against Pitt 13-9. Hail. He went from that kicker to being one of the greatest. Every Pitt person cares about it. And to going to be one of the greatest punters of that generation, that era,
right?
To then being just like a pop culture icon at this point. And he's great at everything he does. One of the best podcasters, interviews better than most anyone. And he's a wrestler who can do shit that
and a wrestling announcer.
And a wrestling announcer who's pretty good at it. Like, he's someone that I think is going to be, people are going to be looking for his.
I want his rookie card.
Yeah. I think he might be one of those guys that 10, 15 years down the road, when that generation who watched him do all these non-football things.
And he only has a couple cards.
He only has a couple of cards.
He only has, I think, one rookie.
Yeah.
I looked
Isn't it
into it.
Yeah, I'm trying to
Tops
think. It might be a
or-
Tops.
Yeah.
Tops or a Bowman. But
Hmm.
yeah, I mean, it's a hard find.
Not a
But
lot out there.
does he have WWE cards, Mike?
I don't think he does yet.
That's shocking. He should be in a WWE set. It's kind of shocking that he's not.
With all the people that put in the sets now.
Yeah,
they
exactly.
he really should, but maybe, I don't know. Yeah. That'd
But
be
yeah,
great.
he's someone in like 10 to 15 years. I really think people are going to look back and say,
If
oh my
he,
God,
if
he
he
was
has an
awesome.
autograph card in a WWE product, I'm buying one. I will put that out right here. I will start a new
Buy
PC.
it. Buy it.
Don't buy it. It won't
Don't
try to
buy
break
any
it.
breaks. Don't buy any breaks. Just buy the card.
Yeah, but Pat McAfee, like, that's a great one.
Yeah.
Really, really great. Like, a lot of people don't realize how popular he is, I think, but he is incredibly popular, and he has, younger people that like to watch his show, live stream his show.
Yeah.
People, he's doing college football, he's doing wrestling, like he has like irons and how many different pots. I don't know what the expression is, but
Jack
I think it's huffing feathers. Huffing feathers.
Huffing feathers.
Well, the feathers are all huffed.
Feathers. Yeah, he's huffing a lot of feathers.
He's a jack of all trades, master of all of them. Like, you know what I mean? Like he's really good at everything he does. So it'll be interesting to see. We appreciate him now, and I think the kids people love his podcast. Like people younger than us love his podcast because he's a straight. He's not going to bullshit you for the most part. He's a pretty entertaining cat.
Comes
and
across like we would if you talk to the person.
Yeah,
and that's why he's so good. He's so relatable because the way he's talking to his guest, what he's asking, what the whole crew there is talking about, like that would be us if he was on the podcast.
Ask him this. We want to know this, and he always inevitably asked them what I'm thinking he should ask them. Like
and he changed the way things are done. Like he has his show live streamed, like did it himself. Like he didn't have to be on ESPN. He didn't have to be on one of the other sports networks. He did it himself. Like changing the way that you do things. And yeah, that's huge. Great one to end it on. Well, that was a lot of fun. I don't know what we're going to talk about next week, but we'll be back and do it, right?
Yep.
Sure, why not?
All right, take care, guys.
All right. See ya.
See you, boys.